Well, welcome everyone. It's nice to have you here. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Appreciate you coming. My name is Jim Bruscia. I'm the County Superintendent for San Luis Obispo County, and I'm also a clinical faculty member at Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo. And I have two of my colleagues here today, Ann Hubbard, who's a superintendent in a K-8 school district in our county, and Andrea Somoza Norton, who is a professor at the California Polytechnic in San Luis Obispo as well. And so we wanted to share with you a little bit about our story and some of the successes, some of the failures, and some of the challenges, and then have you brainstorm and leave with some action items on ways that you can attack this train that is heading down the track at us and has been somewhat ignored up until this last year. And I want to start off with a little story, and it's going to include the two ladies here to some extent, just about how recruitment and retention and challenging is all of our responsibility. And I go back to when I was an undergraduate in school, and of course everyone thinks they're going to be pre-med when they head off to school. And you didn't think you were going to be pre-med, Ann? Okay, I don't know. Maybe it was just that crowd that I was with there. After the first organic chemistry class, realizing, oh no, that's not it. And moving forward, and it was a teacher that I had made a connection with that really asked me, well, you know, when you volunteered to be in the mathematics lab as part of your service learning credit in high school, why did you continue doing that after the course was over? And I thought about, because I enjoyed it. It was a sense of satisfaction. We have to be the ambassadors for becoming teachers. And I had grandma lobbying me to be a priest, and I had dad lobbying me to be an engineer, and it was this teacher from high school that really said, look at what you've done, how you enjoyed this, how you're able to give back, and how important this profession is. Now, this was the late 70s, early 80s, when we had the movie Teachers on with Nick Nolte, and our profession was portrayed very poorly at that time. But this is someone who I respected. We all have to be those ambassadors. We have to instill that in our staff, in ourselves as superintendents, in ourselves as HR directors, in ourselves as teachers. I'll use Ann as another example. She was in administration and leadership program several years ago where I was teaching, and one of my colleagues, share your story, Ann.
I went into the master's program at Cal Poly, definitely not with the idea of going into administration. I actually said, you couldn't pay me $1 million to be a principal. And I went in with the idea that I was going to head down into a teacher training path and work in the field of teacher training. And when I applied to Cal Poly and got in, Dr. Genelucci called me from the program and said, I really think you should get an administrative credential. I said, no, I don't want to do that. And he said, I really think you should. It will broaden your horizons, your perspective. It will give you a better picture as you head into teacher preparation, a fuller picture. And I thought, well, that makes sense. Okay, sure, I'll do it. And I ended up, as part of the program, you take on an internship, some field work. So I took on an internship first at a junior high. That was my comfort level. I taught in middle school for 20 years. And I thought, wow, I actually get to be with kids more. My idea of administration was just piles of paper and angry parents. Who wants to do that? So I really got to see that I actually had a wider, I felt, area of influence with students than I did even as a teacher dealing with my own set of students. And so then I asked to take on another internship, and I took on an internship at an elementary school. And then I thought I might as well round out the picture, and I took on an internship at a high school. And really came to the realization only because I had immersed myself in it, and somebody had said, why don't you at least just try this? And realized, wow, I really actually like administration. It's getting to make decisions in a wider way that affects the kids, the reason why we're all in education. So it was definitely somebody that said, why don't you?
It's that ambassador position that we all have to take, and that's no cost. Everyone in our organization can be an ambassador as to why they're there. And we have to keep drumming that tune with our staff. And I know myself, being responsible for the county education and as a school district superintendent, I can't say that all of my colleagues believe it's their job. especially coming off of the recession. And Andrea is another example. This was advocation from the field that when a leadership position opened up at the university, that we find someone who is a practitioner scholar, not just a pure academic. And so recruiting her from the Department of Education in your state where you were before.
And I was originally in Reno, Nevada, Washoe County for several years, 13 years. And then we moved to the East Coast and I became a principal. Actually, the principalship was a little bit difficult. I was the only Latina principal in the entire state ever.
Tell them what state you were in.
New Hampshire. But it was a really, the passion and truly being a service to the profession that I kept going. And make sure that now that I'm at the ELAB program, I bring that practitioner view that sometimes it gets lost between the theory and the academia. So really keep that in mind and never forget where you're coming from.
And it's incumbent upon the people in the field to change that. How many of you, when you started to think about going into education, had someone say, "Oh, you don't want to do that"? I mean, I know I had people say,
My own father.
yeah, oh, you do not want to do that. But it really has to come from within the education to start changing that language and start changing that notion of, oh, no, you don't, no, you don't, you definitely don't want to do that.
And the reason I started with the 3 stories is, especially those of you that are superintendents and have some political clout in the community, we have to lobby our universities to change their mindset and to realize that we have to be a partnership. It can no longer just be the ivory tower over here. We have to view ourselves as part of the solution and part of the story. So that's why I started off. And really, I don't think this is a surprise to anyone, but we are facing a significant shortage. And I have a slight disagreement with Linda this morning from her keynote. I think even if we were able to retain all of our individuals who are leaving through normal attrition, we still would be facing this because we have the baby boomer generation that is coming up against us. And this is a larger issue than even our politicians are wanting to think about. But we as community can come together and resolve this in small steps. And even if each of you, especially the rural and remote school districts, can get 1 or 2 prospects, that takes a little pressure off you. I look at our county, for example, 35,000 students. I have 10 school districts, 3 charters, and about a dozen private schools in my county under my stewardship. And our university, we have a university in our county, Polytechnic University. They will produce 75 credential candidates at the end of this year. But it's not like San Jose State or Sac State where they stay. Cal Poly is a destination university like UCLA or UC San Diego. Only 46% of those candidates will remain in our county. I have 1 school district that I know that will have 50 openings next year. I'm terrified right now. And we're trying everything, and I'll share some of the stories with you. So really our session here today is to talk about how I'm raising awareness with our businesses. I'm raising awareness with the 10 superintendents that serve on my superintendent's council. I'm raising awareness with the community college president, and I've been beating on the door of the university president, even as a faculty member there, that they need to pay more attention to this. CSU is a challenging animal. It is the largest credential provider, not only in the state, but in the country. If you look at the 23 campuses, it's a tremendous bureaucracy. And I want to point out some of the stats right here. If you look back to 2001, there were 65,000 credentials awarded through the Cal State system. Again, the largest credential provider, not only in the state, but in the country. There were about 386,000 students in total CSU enrollment. Fast forward to last year, there were 15,000 credentials awarded. Yet the enrollment at CSU had jumped to 460,000. So you had an 80,000 uptick in student enrollment, but look at the difference from 15,000, 65,000. And if you go back to 2000, that number was at 70,000 credentials. This is very scary. We're not able to keep up with demand just from what's being produced right now. This needs to be on your talking points at Rotary meetings. This needs to be on your talking points with your superintendent's council. I had 2 years ago HR directors in our county prior to our economic relief that we're experiencing now. Oh no, I'm not going to need anybody. We don't need to hire. Even up until a year ago, one of my superintendents was in denial. Because 3 years ago, what were we doing with our teachers? We were laying them off. When I was full-time at Cal Poly as a professor, I was telling my candidates, get a job as a barista, substitute teach, be patient, get your face in front of the principal and you'll get a job. Right now, anybody with a credential who's competent is hired. We need to be proactive right now about this. If you look at the number of teachers in California, and this one, again, is a talking point where we lobby with our county superintendents, our district superintendents to create that critical mass, that synergy. Again, go back to 2007, there were about 300 teachers in our state. You go back to last year, look at how the numbers dropped at the same time when we're starting to try and downsize classes, which means we're going to have another uptick. We're not even addressing the class size reduction issues here. So I wanted to also just put out, so you can look at the types of school districts. There are more rural and remote school districts in this state than large urban school districts. And I know those of us, most of us in the room are from smaller school districts. We get ignored and overshadowed by LA Unified and Orange County and Fresno or Central. However, if you think about it, there out of the 1,000 school districts, the majority of those are small. May not represent the bulk of the population, but we do have the numbers. Only 343 unified. There are 527 elementary districts in our state of the just under, a little over 1,000 school districts that we have. And then if you look at the types of teachers in our elementary schools, by far the bulk compared to our middle or junior highs or high schools than our other school districts looking at our workforce, and this was last year's numbers there. Why I say this is important is because if you look at this group here with our elementary teachers, that's your crossover point from the credentialing standpoint. So those of you that are HR directors and superintendents, if we can get them in to the multiple subject level and get them interested, it's much easier to move them into your specialty areas or your hard to fill, such as your special education. Even speech pathology is much easier to move once they have that base credential. If you shoot for the math or the special education, your climb is harder than trying to move around. Getting really knowledgeable on your PIP and your STIP types of credentials, and how do you do that? So let's take that workforce. If you're a county superintendent, you're charged with basically the programs that you as districts either can't do or don't want to do. I have the juvenile hall. I have the special education programs. I have the community schools. Talk about difficult to fill. So we started with a very simple approach, looking at our existing workforce that didn't meet the credentialing requirements. Juvenile hall, you have to have a special ed credential and a general ed credential to serve there. That's very difficult. You know how hard it is to find special education teacher. So I put out to our employees, worked with the union proactively on this. We want to offer an educator incentive, not a stipend, not a bonus, but if you apply as a multiple subject teacher, we will help you get your special ed credential, and year for year service will retire 1/5 of the cost. And the reason I went year for year for 1/5 is that by 5 years, they're going to be fairly vested in you as an organization. And I also didn't want my basic aid school districts right down the street to say, oh, you just paid for that special education credential, now we're going to steal them and pay. Yeah, right. Which, by the way, she's one of those school districts. So that was a very simple one. It took a lot more work to get that past my association than I thought it would. But keeping it out of the realm of stipend, using it as a professional development incentive, and I'm using my educator effectiveness dollars towards that. We had two teachers that did it. I was able to get them in on the emergency basis into the juvenile hall. These are teachers that want to be there, and I think we're going to keep them. So that's something you can do immediately, looking at your existing workforce on this. Another stat right here, which really scares me as well, if you look at our ethnicity of teachers, our largest non-white ethnic minority is Hispanic or Latino. And if you look at then, we're skewing to being a more female-dominated profession than we used to be. which is another interesting stat, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But these are talking points that I think will help you when you're getting that synergy within the community to pay attention to this. I'm still finding out now, a year into the circuit of drumming this up with the community groups, they're still thinking we're laying off teachers and there's no jobs. A large portion of the general public feels that way, and we have to say, no, you need to think about this. Just by me going to Rotary clubs, speaking at the Kiwanis, talking to the seniors, having brochures in the trunk of my car, I've picked up, Farmers Market is another one, picked up at least 5 prospects in the last month, none of which are for my office. They're all for you as district superintendents and district employees. I'm looking at it as my job as county superintendent to help recruit teachers, not just special ed teachers or juvenile hall teachers for my needs. You need to raise that awareness with your county superintendents. They have the bully pulpit. Their constitutional responsibility is to superintend the school districts in their county. Now, I wouldn't want Arturo's job in LA for anything. I think that would be impossible, but in our smaller counties, I know all the communities. I've met all the mayors. I've spoken to the Board of Supervisors, and every time I go somewhere, I raise the awareness and the urgency that this is a noble and wonderful profession. You need to consider it. Your grandkids need to consider it. Hey, you're a young retiree from the military. Have you ever thought about teaching? Hey, I understand you just sold your company's stocks right there, and you're going to get tired of traveling with your wife. Have you ever thought of teaching social study? I mean, it's that type of dialogue. We're starting to get some movement. We really are in our county. Again, a small county, 35,000 students, 10 school districts. Only about 275,000 people in our county. But you're going to spend $500,000 for a home there. So I'm not going to get somebody from Fresno to come over. It's too expensive for them. I have to grow my own. If you look at some of the other states and the things that they're doing, you see that both California, New York, and Texas are all experiencing these huge drops. It's not just us. So yes, we can get on a plane and we can go to Harvard, and we can do a recruitment tour. Yes, we can send a group to Spain and try and recruit there. I've been to all of those in different districts, and I haven't seen any fruit from that expenditure. You know, our $1,600 per credentialed staff member we're getting isn't going to pay for very many trips back east. I would love to see some more diversity in our ranks, but I think we have to start locally, and we have to try and grow it there. Maximizing our investment right now. So I want to just talk a little bit about the contributing factors and then share some of the stories that the two ladies have here. The recession was our biggest problem, and we have to talk about that to the public because they understand it. The reason that we were laying off all these teachers was the recession. The people that I gave pink slips to 7-8 years ago found other jobs. I as a school principal, I remember handing those out. I've contacted about 6 of those individuals and said, hey, would you consider coming back? They've moved on with their life. We have very limited potential to leverage that group to come back. We have to start fresh. We need to keep asking them, but they've become winery managers. They've moved into retail. They've started their own business. And then when you say, hey, would you come work for us for 40 grand when they're making 65? That's a hard sell. Oh, and by the way, you have to go back and clear your credential and do that other, the induction piece there. That is a kill. The female-dominated profession. The reason I brought that up, if you look at my generation, my mother's generation, what was acceptable profession for women?
Nursing and teaching.
Nursing and teaching. It's wide open right now. My daughter finishes at UC San Diego last year, lands a $55,000 a year job as an HR office manager in a construction firm. I can't even offer that as a teacher. Maybe a speech pathologist, but not as a teacher. and so we're competing, and that's the demographic you want, is these young graduates coming out with the energy, but we're having trouble competing. My generation, the baby boomers, we're all starting to retire. I don't know about you, but as soon as the retirement incentives came back, as soon as we got rid of furloughs, people were looking at their salary schedule and saying, okay, I'm going to do one more year and now I'm done. I don't think that's going to change. I think we're going to continue to see that. The workforce demands, talking to the public about that again. Just take a minute at your table right here and talk about the changes in workforce demands you've experienced since you started your career. Just come up with one per table. Okay, what did we come up with over here?
Well, we basically,
It's helping somebody else. It says
kind of along the lines of time to do it all. I mean, I think that many of us entered thinking we wouldn't have to be necessarily all doing all the social work and the
Yep.
counseling and all those things that come along with it.
The complexity of the job has changed dramatically. I don't recall as a teacher at university ever being told you need to worry about whether children come to your classroom with breakfast or not. And I was at UC San Diego where they were sending us to do field work in San Isidro. And that did not come up in our courses then. How about over here?
We talked about increased demands for reporting. I was thinking about, I'm in administration, so we have all sorts of demands for public records requests, freedom of information requests.
Yeah.
And then legal stuff, people, if anyone sues anybody and we're part of it, whether, for whatever reason, suddenly we have all these subpoenas that we can't ignore. We have to deal with subpoenas. I don't have a subpoena staff.
No, and neither do small county offices. I'm the subpoena staff in our county office. No, I agree. When I started as a principal, I don't think until 5 years into my principalship did I see a public records request or even heard about it. Never at university. How about over here?
Oh, the four walls have come down.
Yeah.
There's much more transparency in the classroom, at the school site. Expectations are much higher.
I did see your Facebook post last night. So yeah, no, absolutely. We are no longer the solitary individuals. In the back group here, I heard you.
We talked about technology and just that whole, it used to be an isolated experience, as a teacher, close the door, you're in charge of your happiness. You might take some state tests, wait one time.
Oh.
Now it's everything is out in the open, everything's being scrutinized, including how you teach.
Right.
And that's scary.
I recall removing the rotary phone from the office because the secretary was spending too much time explaining to the kids, it was a phone they could call their parents on, how to use the rotary dial. Yeah, I am old. And you've hit all of those. We have to communicate that to our constituency to convince them why it's important to encourage people. At the same time, we have to share why we entered the profession and why it's rewarding. So here's your first take home. Take a minute, come up with that elevator speech. Because I found, I don't know about you, but we're usually not the most exciting group at the cocktail party. Oh, you're an educator. Tell me about that. But yet, I'm weaving into everything I say, every message, every talk about how great this profession is and how honored I am to be part of it. So come up with your elevator speech right now. Come up with your 30 seconds. Yeah.
I'm thinking about going
Hey,
into.
you see this young, bright, this young, bright graduate. How are you going to sell them? And then we need to model that for our subordinates, for our teachers. I'm constantly trying to model it for my district superintendents because we get sucked up in just what you said. The day-to-day work overwhelms us and we forget that we have to be the sales, we have to be the farm recruiter, the farm team recruiter. So think about those talking points there, and as we move forward, I've made my administrators, I've invited my administrators to participate in this and tried to convince them that they are the ambassadors, they are the change agent. But I'll be honest, it hasn't been easy. Even with the HR directors in our county, they're still consumed with the compliance end of the job and not looking at themselves as the talent scouts. Even to the, I tell my HR director now, you're the talent scout, how's it going? How's it going? Some of the other things right here just about our profession, we've become larger in terms of the number of individuals, but not in terms of FTEs. So that's really important to remember. We are definitely much grayer than we used to be as a profession. If you look overall, even going back 10 years, because all of our newbies were laid off. We have less experience within the profession than if you went back one generation. We are more female. Positive things, we are more diverse. Interestingly, we have maintained consistency in academic achievement levels. This fallacy that our teachers are the bottom of the barrel of college grads there is not significant difference between the teaching population from the 60s and the 70s as there is today. That is somewhat of a fallacy. Then the last piece right there is we're less stable. We are having more movement. It is no longer, I started teaching when I was 22 years old, and I'm 52. That's not the norm anymore. You don't see that. And now that also is societal. You looked, especially if you go back one more generation, you see that group that stayed in a job forever. But I think that's a positive, because that gives us an opportunity to recruit individuals from those other areas. So I'm going to talk a little bit about these approaches that we have here, and I want to flip to the video first. It's a promo video.
Would you like to help build a better tomorrow? I'm James Bruscia, and it's my privilege to serve as the San Luis Obispo County Superintendent of Schools. I began my career as a teacher in 1986 and considered an honor to be part of this noble profession. Do you have what it takes to join our ranks and provide for the 21st century? Teaching is simply about impacting lives. It is part of a storied legacy. It is absolutely a moral imperative. Unlike any other profession, we have greater opportunities to fundamentally make the world a better place. I don't think every profession can say that.
It's so rewarding to see them kind of grow and learn how to write and learn how to read.
I can't really think of any other jobs that are as meaningful as teaching is, that leave like a lasting impression like teaching does.
As a teacher, you have a large responsibility because you're preparing them with the tools that they need to be professional and to do work in our world. So it's actually a little bit more beneficial than just being in the cubicle all day.
Teaching is probably the most rewarding profession out there. Students remember things that you do with them every single day, and I think it's very meaningful how we can empower our students.
The most rewarding part is being able to see when a student gets it, and that moment when it clicks, and you just see it in their eye, and you see them being able to apply it and then transfer it into a useful life skill.
The San Luis Obispo County Office of Education, in partnership with Brandman University, is excited to offer a hybrid one-year teacher certification program designed to meet the needs of today's adult learner. Our program is designed to serve individuals who hold a bachelor's degree, require instruction outside the traditional school hours, and want to work with current local practitioners. For additional information, please contact our office at 805-543-7732 or visit our website at www.sloco.org. Consider teaching. It's the career of a lifetime.
So that was an example of a 2-year effort with the university. Now, I started with Cal State. They're much more bureaucratic. I'm not trying to promote Brandman or Laverne or any particular university. I believe it's incumbent upon Cal State to do this. I just can't wait as county superintendent. We're hoping to build a cohort. This is our first year, so you're seeing the ad before my district superintendents are actually seeing it. Of 20 to 25 local individuals in our county who have a bachelor's degree. Brandman, which is Chapman University, that's somebody gave $10 million named Brandman, I think, and, and so they became the satellite campus. We're simply providing the facility, but the other piece that really was attractive to me is we're helping now to recruit the faculty, and those are going to be practitioners in the field. So our hotshot teachers, our hotshot administrators that we want, and it'll be outside of regular work hours, so we can go after our instructional assistants, our individuals that maybe have children no longer at home, that are thinking about that, our young retirees, our people that started down a path earlier in life. This is not the 19 to 22-year-old demographic. This is a much older demographic. I tease my wife about that. I say, if you give up medicine, would you consider going into it? She just looks at me and shakes my head. You work too hard. No. And this is someone who does 12-hour shifts at the hospital saying, we work too hard. You can do this in your districts or your county offices. There are several county offices throughout the state that have already started. Santa Clara County Office of Ed pushes out more teaching credentials than CSU San Jose does. Not because San Jose couldn't do that, but because the recession, the university's contracted so much, they're a huge bureaucracy, they can't respond quick enough. I think they will eventually. The chancellor's office is aware of it. It just takes them a while. So this Grow Your Own, we're using all of our educator effectiveness dollars in our county to promote retention, and we're putting into this. Every school district in my county is bought into this. None of our teachers are paying induction costs. None of our administrators are paying those. The districts are all picking them up. Again, we're investing in our employees. Now, for my office alone, it was about 70 grand. That's it. We're done this year. I'm really rolling the dice, hoping that the governor re-ups this again, but I think we've got to tell these people we value you and we want you there. You're going to get lobbied on how to use those dollars from your ed services people, from others, but I think we have to invest it immediately in those educators that are there. I want to talk a little bit about that Grow Your Own. Previously, I was the superintendent in the district that Ann's in. I love data, and I was at the university prior to that, was looking at the train coming. I brought in individuals who were moving through the college program as paraeducators, hired them at the school district. You now have them as teachers. You want to talk about that? Yeah, your baby teachers.
I have a really split staff, very experienced in what we so kindly call our baby teachers. I've asked them, they don't mind. But what they did was they came in pre-service. Jim hired them before they even went in the credential program as instructional aides. Therefore, when they went into the credential program, they were ready to come to the campus as student teachers. And then you had this great little, cachet of teachers ready to hire as the teachers that were ready to retire took the early incentive that Jim wisely offered. And now I've got these teachers that have been there for 5-6 years. And on top of it, because of that great experience and where they're at, they're starting now to look at other master's programs. They're growing themselves too, master's in curriculum and instruction. I'm trying to talk a few of them into the administrative master's program. And they're ready to go on in their careers. I have a fabulous woman who started off as she's not a credentialed librarian, but working as a library tech and loves kids, had a credential, but she let it go because she said, I've realized I like kids, but I don't ever want to be in a classroom. She was comfortable being an instructional assistant. She was comfortable working with the kids in the library. And this year when I had an opening, I said, are you sure you're so great with the kids? I mean, she does all this instruction in the library. And she said, no, I definitely don't want to do it. And I said, okay, how about, I knew her passion was STEAM. I said, how about if you teach just an elective in STEAM? She goes, oh, that would be, phenomenal. So we got her into the TIP, back into the program. She re-upped her credential. She's in the induction program. And now she's like coming up with all other classes that she can teach. And she's, because I tapped into something that she wasn't comfortable with the traditional, multi-subject setting, but she is just phenomenal. And she's working with all of my teachers on bringing project-based learning in. I mean, working more than I ever could have worked her, in a traditional classroom setting. And this is her, and she's constantly, can I do this? And the answer is yes, yes, yes. And believe me, the positive effect it's had where she was shrinking away from the profession, I hit upon a vein that that lit a passion. I had a teacher who had been a math teacher for several years. He was really intrigued and interested in technology and took on his own time some of this dream I had of this one-to-one program. And he's, seeing that capacity and seeing him kind of burn out. So we talked about, what about transitioning into some technology integration or a TOSA spot? And again, what I've got out of him and his dedication, his passion, and the time he's spending and the things he's bringing to the campus, have grown tenfold than when he was in a classroom kind of burning out, kind of sick of what he was doing as a math instructor. And I got to replace him with another baby teacher who is just, rocking it and loving it. And again, had been in a high school teaching AP Stats, hated it. First year teaching AP Stats, said, I guess I'm not cut out to be a teacher. He saw my ad and said, well, I guess I'll apply. I'll just see. He was very frank with me and said, I don't know if I want to do this. So I said, just give me a shot. I think you'll find it different than AP Stats. These are 6th, 7th, and 8th graders that will be excitable, and you're not going to have to try to convince them that, you're smarter than they are, and you're not going to have the parents breathing down your neck about their AP scores. And I just checked in with him about 2 months ago. How's it going? He said, it's going great. It's going great. I checked with him a month ago. I'm never leaving. I love it. I love it. I found it. I found my passion. And so it's really finding those veins within those people that are either, not sure or just timidly doing something or saying, I think I'm done, and working to keep them. And like I'm doing with those teachers he brought in that are my 5- and 6-year teachers, continually challenging them and building them and encouraging them to apply for these master's programs and expand their knowledge base and keep current and keep excited. So
it's that talent scout piece. It's the how do you encourage those individuals to look at that? And so what I want to ask you right now, so that when you go back, how can you create that synergy? The math teacher she's talking about was as a direct result of her speaking with another HR director about their staff and both having enough knowledge about their employees to say where the fit is. We're not using each other enough. We need to leverage more. So what I'd like you to do right now, who are you going to call when you get back in the office to promote this discussion? Whether it's internally or externally. You have to take that step. And my colleagues got so sick of hearing this, but now they're realizing, it's a topic of the HR forum in our county now. It is a topic of discussion at every superintendent's forum, and now I'm starting to see it as a topic of discussion in our larger school districts at the principal meetings. Maybe your site is a better fit than his site. It's not that employee needs to go, and you might keep them longer. So right now, write down, who are you going to call? You have to call another strategy. What are you going to do when you get back to that office the next day or two?
There's something to think about with my high school stats teacher. It was not a good fit for him. He did not like being at the high school level. That was a different district. Yet when I called about him, they said, he didn't fit here, but I think he'll fit. I had a teacher that didn't fit in my little fishbowl of a district, but she had great instructional practices. And one of the superintendents of a larger district in our county called and said, well, what's the deal? And I said, you're going to love her. It wasn't a fit here. And, you're going to love her. So it's really about having those conversations and
who can you work with? Mm-hmm. And really, so at the university, then there's our third leg right there. So you're seeing the county office, a district office, and then a university level, and how we engage the practitioners there.
One thing that Dr. Brescia did immediately after I arrived at Cal Poly, new junior faculty, is inviting me immediately to the Superintendent's Council, be a voice there from the higher education field. And that I'm extremely grateful because that way it keeps me in contact with the superintendents and listening to what their needs are. And coming back to our faculty, who are very passionate and practitioners, and they need to listen what our needs are, at your level. So I was wondering, how many of you actually have connections or, even if it's not you, perhaps your district, connections with higher ed that you know for sure? Okay.
So about half the room. But that, in fairness, the university is to some extent an artifact of the Renaissance. And you have to jump in there and take the lead on that. And I know it seems that they should be knocking on our door, but I think if we wait for that, we're going to be in further trouble. And really, it's that all of these pieces right there, getting to know your population, getting to know your workforce, and then also getting through our wonderful support staff that we have in HR. They've just come off of the fact of letting all these people go. They're not looking at themselves as the talent scouts. And I know even in my own office, where we're constantly flying ads for mobility specialists, for occupational therapists, they think that the solution is, let's just fly another ad. We have to think outside the box. So it's getting everyone to go in. So fostering these three relationships they've paid off. You have a school district now that really could have had a 50% shortage of teachers. She's set. We have another school district that's now getting in front of it. Paso Robles is going to hire all of those people who finish this program. They're guaranteed.
There's going to be some arm wrestling.
There'll be a little armor. The other piece where I'm lobbying with the school boards, so those of you that are superintendents, I'm trying to convince them that we should encourage these candidates to loan money for the program, because it's going to be about 17 grand to go through a year-long credential program through Brandman. And then we retire the loan debt 1/5 per year for each year of employment. Keep it outside of collective bargaining. This isn't a stipend, it isn't a salary. Yeah, they're going to have to declare it in their taxes and they're going to have to pay it as that. But this is, you're using your educator effectiveness dollars. Because the union gave a lot of pushback initially on, well, we want to do hiring bonuses or we want to do incentives. I've gotten pretty much a no across the board on that. So I'm trying to find another avenue. But I'm one of those people that will keep finding different paths as opposed to just accepting the no that you will always get. So again, who's the person you're going to talk to? Where are you going to go? If you don't have that university connection, make it. If you don't have a county office that will help you do this, get on the phone to somebody else's county office. There's several of us that are doing that. That's our job as county superintendents, to help you and support you. It isn't just about us looking at your finances and telling whether you're in negative certification or positive. It has to be much more than that. And Ann talked a lot about those mid-career teachers and tapping into them. That's critical. I showed you the video there. And these are some of the things that are being done at the university level.
So I just wanted to share a few points for you. Even though educational leadership is my area, we are a small faculty, a small group, and we meet frequently to discuss how can we meet the needs of the district. There's definitely a commitment to effective teacher preparation. We discuss how to build those partnerships with our districts and our teachers, even at the grade level. So I think, and this is something that I learned from my previous experience at the Department of Education in New Hampshire, we really look into creating this relationship when we can have mutually determined goals from K to 20. So having a student learning and professional development that is truly aligned. And how can we help you? For example, if Ann called me and says, oh, maybe can you help me with this professional development? I definitely will say yes and make sure that we can support her needs. So, but the key is sustainable collaboration, and that is consistent and ongoing, and there's a continuing, not just doing one shot professional development and then you don't see me anymore. So having a goal and a plan that meets your needs.
That piece there too. How are we asking the university or higher ed to engage with us on a regular basis? So by having her sit on my superintendent's council, I'm ensuring that. But I'll have to say that is not a uniform practice across the counties. And it isn't a uniform practice across universities to be engaged at that level. And I know for the college president and even for the university coordinators, we're talking about I don't change my meeting, but I'm including them in it. Mm-hmm. So I'm not changing my superintendent's council to tailor it to the university. And I know probably half of what we discuss, collective bargaining, AB 1200, all the acronym soup that we live in, isn't part of higher education, but I think it's important that the connection is there. And it has helped us recruit and retain candidates. So I kind of wanted to take a little time right now and questions. I mean, I've shared with you a couple of strategies that you can do for limited or no cost. Again, you know the demographics of our county, and I'm working with the community college with 2 universities at this point, the 10 districts. Questions, things you want to flesh out a little more on this?
Or things that you're doing
that you want to share with others.
That we could try. That we could steal.
You're like a graduate school class the first night. They're all, just tell me what the assignment is and how many pages, and is it APA format or MLA?
Maybe I can tell them what we're doing about that.
Okay.
Okay.
So, I mean, your rural districts, I mean, the university piece, those of you that don't have a connection right there, thoughts, questions about that? And I know sometimes the university can be off-putting.
Well, we do recruitment fairs. I mean, Chico
Yeah.
State does a recruitment.
Right.
And we attend that. There's a job bank, basically, or a job.
So recruitment fairs, job banks.
And I mean, there are phone calls, I mean, that we have to make to places like Chico State, looking for those graduate students I know we have a sub problem.
Right.
Our sub pool is, yeah, exactly. So we send flyers out to Chico State, they put them on their kiosks, and I traveled myself over to Chico State to put them in other places, and so, and again, I mean, that just, and sometimes out of the sub ranks, you gain teachers.
Right. On the sub front right there, a couple of things we've tried in the county is we actually made large banners, and several of our school districts, because we handle all the substitute clearances for the entire county, are putting them on the buses, and they're parked in front of some of the sites when they're there, so they'll park it on the street. We're putting it on fences. We have a public service announcement. My county office controls 2 television stations, so we're flying, consider being a substitute teacher. And we're flying.
Literally going to the farmer's market.
Right, and passing out those things at the farmer's market. So really, we're looking beyond just the university, but to the general public, to the individuals. I talked to my sister who commutes to Los Angeles from where I live in Paso Robles, and to subbing one day a week. She has a college degree. I don't think she's going to become a teacher. She makes far more money than and likes her time too much, but the superintendent, Paso Robles, is very happy that he has a sub now for the list. So it's yeah, exactly, Mondays and Fridays. The other thing is we stopped all staff development on Mondays and Fridays at the county office. We will hold no conferences or workshops on those days because it's too difficult for people to. That's all come through dialogue. And it's that forced discussion, so that constant agenda item with the university. Other thoughts, other questions that you might have? Oh, Anne wants to hear your elevator speeches. Who's first? All right, Christopher.
I've used it before. A former student of mine was going to go into education and ask my advice, and I told her, straight up, if you go and get your degree in special education, you're always going to have a job. And, here we are, that was 15 years ago, and she's still a special ed teacher and as happy as she can be. So, if you're looking for job security, special education's where it's at.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And you're dealing with some of the most vulnerable population that needs, from a social justice standpoint, needs us. Anybody else want to share there? So I won't put you on the spot and make you do it. Oh, there you, okay, very good, all right.
I don't know that it's a speech. It's the same thing, talking to my son who's thinking of going into teaching, and the bottom line was you better have a passion for it. You better really want to do it. Yes, it's great. It's conducive to raising a family, especially if you have a spouse that is in the same profession. It allows you to do other things. There's flexibility, there's independence in your time, but and autonomy to a certain extent, and creativity and design, all that. But you better have a passion for it. It shouldn't be for the other reasons. So.
Absolutely, that passion, and those are the things that we're talking about, and we're starting to get traction. But it's been a year, and I can say I have 5 people in the county that I didn't actively recruit from universities because of secondhand information. If we all did that, if every one of my superintendents, every one of my administrators did that when they went somewhere, we might have that 50 or 60 we need. So I'm going to keep knocking on the door, and I encourage you all to do the same thing. Any other stories anyone wants to share?
I'll share a story.
Sure, please.
The father of an educator, a special educator right now. Years ago, he'd always known that he wanted to teach elementary school. He wanted to be a kindergarten teacher and everything else, and happened to get involved with a Chico State program where he was able to get his master's and a special education credential. And he wanted to do a small rural school district, so he did student teaching and things like that. And he ended up landing his first job as a severely handicapped special educator, teaching severely handicapped students, and it was K-12 in a small rural district. And he called me about, probably a month into it and said, Dad, you know what, I really want to teach social studies at the high school level. I want to be at the high school level. I don't want to do this and everything else because all I'm doing is I'm, looking at colors and I'm organizing dots and things like that. And what I had to share with him, and it gets into that elevator speech of how you impact lives, and the fact that what he did with those kids, helping them organize their forks and their spoons and knowing their colors and getting them from point A to point B, made the parents so happy with the progress they made.
Right.
You've impacted their lives for the rest of their lives. And so that, not an elevator speech, but just the fact that passion for helping others, he brought that back in. I think now he's at a high school, and he's a larger high school, and he's doing
Absolutely.
okay.
No. So I think if the takeaways from today are nothing more than raising the sense of urgency with your colleagues and your own subordinates, fostering a relationship with the university and looking at ourselves as the talent scout, you can move forward on this and make incremental changes in this. There are universities that will partner with you. This is an experiment. I'll let you know in a year how many credential candidates we're actually able to produce out of this. But I have to do something because I was also around when class size reduction hit, and I saw our rural and remote school districts hiring anybody with a pulse because our more affluent suburban school districts scalped. And this is going to happen again if we don't get in front of this. I was one of those principals that experienced that at that time when the more wealthy suburban school districts could afford to pay more for these teachers. So we have to start growing our own and being proactive about this. And the gentleman in the back before he left said something about we constantly have to be recruiting, regardless of whether we have any openings or not.
It's like that cartoon where one of the characters sees the other character as like a chicken drumstick or something. You need to be looking at everybody like, a teacher. Do I see a teacher in there?
Yeah, it's just so kind of concluding remarks here is, we currently lack a state strategy. There isn't one out there for responding to this. You heard Linda Darling-Hammond, they're talking about it in the Senate right now. Well, I'm sorry, this data was out there 5 years ago. And they're going to talk about it for a few more years. We risk returning to the conditions that we experienced during class size reduction when, bless his heart, Governor Wilson passed it overnight at the 11th hour, but we had libraries turned into classrooms and cafeterias that were divided in half. Because we reacted, we were not proactive about that. We have a risk of returning to this again. Some of the strategies the state did put in place in the early 2000s haven't stayed in effect. My group, our county superintendents, are lobbying for you to be able to have more flexibility on your Title I monies and your Title II monies. You need to have a consistent funding source at your district for ongoing not only professional development, but recruitment and retention. And this last piece, it has to be local and sustainable. If we're waiting for the state, how effective has the testing instrument been for you and the rubrics and the matrix that are coming out from state? You've seen those all, right? No, my point. If we wait for this, it's not going to happen. We're going to be reacting instead of being proactive. So if I can leave you with nothing else, there are little pieces we all can do, and it is going to be outside of your normal job description, and you weren't prepared to do this at university. But if we don't, we're not going to have the teachers in front of our classroom, and we only have control over, there are about 5 variables that affect student achievement. The first one is your parental or primary caregiver academic level of their own personal education and their engagement. We have no control over that. Second one is socioeconomics. Children who are born into poverty are more at risk than children who are not born into poverty. We have no control over that. Next comes the person in front of the classroom. And then comes the person in front of the school. We have control over those 2 variables. So I want to focus our efforts in controlling those two variables, keeping and recruiting the best and the brightest to lead our classrooms and lead our schools. And I think it really has to be a local effort, and it's going to be different in every community. And I get tired of hearing the no we don't, or no we can't, or let's form a committee, let's get a task force, let's talk about this. I'll be retired and sitting in Hawaii by the time that task force actually produces its, blue ribbon recommendations. These are just some of the solutions that have worked in our county. And, we have kids that sit on a bus for 4 hours a day to get to some of our schools. I have a high school that has 64 students in it because it's so rural and remote. I understand those challenges. And then we're competing with a coastal school district that can pay its teachers $90,000 to $100,000 because they have high property taxes.
And an ocean view.
And an ocean view. So I get the fact that the competition, these are just some of the strategies that are working in our county. My email address is on there. I also put the references in the PowerPoint, and I've loaded the new one up on the educator effectiveness page. But please, you can email me at the university or the county office. You can email Ann or Andrea, and we'll be happy to share any information with you. Anything I've written, produced, memos, meeting minutes, they're yours for free. Just call and ask. And I think it's our job. We have to network and share with each other because we're our best support. So anything else anyone want to add or other questions? You guys are way too cooperative here. Everybody needs to drive home now. Is that it?
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, no, thank you for being here, and we appreciate your time.